What does it mean when you've won everything and still feel like you've won nothing? For Novak Djokovic, greatness was never the goal. It was a shield from doubt, from hate. There's a moment after the trophies are lifted, after the interviews are over, when Novak Djokovic is alone again. And in that silence, behind closed doors, lives a man who never truly arrived. From the silence that followed even his loudest triumphs, not in the eyes of the fans, not in the eyes of the media, and maybe not even in his own. His earliest tennis lessons were taken in a bomb shelter. His dreams weren't of Wimbledon. They were of peace. Born into the chaos of war-torn Serbia, Djokovic wasn't raised to chase records. He was raised to survive. And yet, he became the most dominant player of a generation. 24 Grand Slams, the longest time at World No. 1 in history. A complete set of Masters 1000s twice. Numbers that should have ended the debate. But instead, they started another war. Because somehow, in a world that worships winners, Novak Djokovic has always been too much or never enough. Too intense, too emotional, too Serbian. Not graceful like Federer, not humble like Nadal, not charming enough, not lovable enough, not safe enough. Novak Djokovic has been the world #1 longer than any man in history. And still, the crowd often cheers louder for his opponent. He could dominate the sport, but he could never control how the world saw him. That was the real war, not the one on court, but the one inside, the one that no number of trophies could silence, even in finals, even when he's breaking records, even when he's playing flawless tennis, while Federer trained in pristine Swiss academies and Nadal in Spanish tennis royalty. Djokovic grew up dodging air raids, hitting against walls with bullet holes. The tennis world didn't ask for a third act, and when Djokovic forced himself into the story, he became the villain. But every laugh was a negotiation, a subtle plea to be accepted. And no matter how many times he won, he wasn't. When the crowd is against me, I turn it into fuel. Djokovic, after being booed in a Grand Slam semifinal, that line became his armor. But armor only exists when there is something to protect, and Novak has always known he was not their champion. From the start, he stepped into a golden age already scripted. Federer, the artist, Nadal, the warrior, made people uncomfortable. Some of it was circumstance. It can be ugly, loud, flawed, and still undeniable. Some of it was image, and some of it was deeper. He came from Serbia, a country demonized in the West, complex in its identity, and overlooked in the tennis world. He smiled through it. He danced on court. He joked in interviews, because for all his excellence, he disrupted a story people didn't want changed. Federer was elegance. Nadal was grit. Djokovic, he was the reminder that greatness doesn't have to be beautiful, and that he wasn't just fighting opponents. He was fighting perception, and that fight never ended when the match did. On the surface, Novak Djokovic is composed, serene, even. He talks about meditation, breathwork, mindfulness, but beneath that calm lies a storm that's always 1 point away from breaking. The tossed racket, the cold stare at a box that doesn't clap loud enough, the ball hidden, frustration that once got him defaulted from the US Open. These aren't random flare-ups. They're pressure leaks, signs of a man who isn't just trying to win. He's trying to stay in control of everything, every point, every breath, every thought. Because for Novak, control isn't a choice, it's survival. He didn't grow up with security. He grew up with chaos, and tennis was the only thing he could control. The lines were clear. The rules made sense. In a world falling apart, the court became a sanctuary, but it also became a trap. Every match was a test of will, not just against the opponent, but against the chaos that lives within him. When winning becomes your identity, any flaw feels like failure. So he chased perfection, not just in strokes, but in sleep, diet, body language, energy. The irony? Even perfection wasn't enough. He could win 20 matches in a row, but people would talk about the one moment he lost his cool. He could master the game, but never escape the label, unstable, too emotional, a sore winner. What the world saw as arrogance was often a mask for insecurity. What they called over-celebrating was a scream from a man who had to fight for every ounce of respect. And it's exhausting to hold the line between dominance and breakdown, between control and collapse. He's the greatest. Behind every celebration, there's a man clenching his fists, not just in victory, but to keep from falling apart. In the history books, Novak Djokovic will be untouchable. More weeks at No. 1. Head-to-head wins against Federer and Nadal. more Grand Slams, more Masters titles. Not all's grit is immortalized in clay, but Djokovic, by every measurable metric. But legacy isn't just about numbers. It's about how you're remembered and why. And here's the brutal truth. Djokovic won the race, but he never won the room. The crowd still cheers louder for Federer, even in retirement, and in return, he got less love, more scrutiny, louder boos. He's the GOAT with an asterisk of public affection. Maybe it's because he interrupted the fairy tales. Maybe it's because he doesn't fit into the media's safe narrative. Or maybe it's because he tried so hard to be loved. It's not always universally adored. Sometimes it's carved out of resistance, fueled by rejection. There's a cruel paradox in sports. The more visibly you want to be embraced, the more people push you away. Djokovic gave everything, changed his body, elevated his mind, tuned his game to perfection. He won Wimbledon in 2019 in an all-time classic, and the crowd still mourned Federer's loss. He came within one match of a calendar slam in 2021, and the cheers in New York felt more like pity than respect. It's a legacy forged in friction, not adoration. But maybe that's the point, because greatness, real greatness, isn't always clean. Djokovic didn't inherit his legacy. He built it, brick by brick, doubt by doubt, and every one of those bricks came with a price. Novak Djokovic talks a lot about inner peace. He practices yoga, meditates before matches, talks about gratitude, about being in the now. His Instagram is filled with quotes on self-love, resilience, mindfulness, in the sit-along glance at a hostile crowd, in the way his voice tightens when legacy is questioned. Again, I cannot pretend to be someone else just to be liked. And yet, the war never really ends. You can see it in the clenched jaw before a match. That is a man fighting for peace and losing ground every time the world reminds him he is still the outsider. I am who I am. Djokovic, in a post-match press conference, that's not a man at peace. For Djokovic, peace isn't a natural state. It's a performance, a ritual, a discipline, a desperate attempt to mute the noise that has followed him since childhood. The noise that told him he was too raw, too different, too much. But here's the cost of peace for someone like Novak. It's work. It's never resting. Because the second he lets go, the rage returns, the perfectionism, the need to prove, to beat everyone, again, to finally be enough. He meditates so he doesn't scream. He smiles so he doesn't break. He wins so he doesn't collapse. That's not peace. The new generation rises, but they haven't dethroned him, not fully. And yet, Djokovic still plays with urgency, still scowls at doubt, still clenches his fists after a first-round win like it means everything. Not the trophies. That's survival in disguise. And sometimes, the calmest face is hiding the loudest war. There's a reason Novak Djokovic is still playing in his late 30s, chasing more records, more titles, more clarity, because the war inside him isn't over. It never has been. Yes, he's outlasted his rivals. Federer is gone. Nadal is fading, because maybe it does. Not the points, but the proof that he still matters, that he's not fading into the background, that the cheers he never got might still be waiting for him just over the next hill. But here's the twist. Djokovic's final opponent isn't Carlos Alcaraz, or Jannik Sinner, or time itself. It's the voice that's lived inside him since childhood, the one that said, "You have to earn love," the one that turned every match into a referendum on his worth, the one that told him, if you stop winning, they'll forget you ever existed. That's the final match, and maybe it's unwinnable, because greatness isn't peace, it's obsession, it's damage, it's unresolved. Novak Djokovic won tennis, but peace? That's the trophy he's still chasing, and it might be the only one he never holds.